Comes your video, okay, guys. We'll jump on there eventually, I'm sure.
Let us know when you're ready.
I will, you know, agents, they'll come whenever they show up. Are you gonna be putting anything up on the screen?
No, I didn't go high tech
Okay.
today. We'll just
That's cool.
do this
No,
and
that's,
discussion.
I like that. Yep, there's a.
and then we'll go all high tech next time.
Whatever works for you,
Whatever
buddy.
works. Yeah, this is conversations, right? Conversations.
Yes.
We'll do the oral presentation.
Probably introduce yourself. if you-
I will. Are you all set?
Yeah, go.
Okay, good deal. Hey, everybody. Well, thanks for coming. I'm Paul Bush, and I've been here at this market center since 2003, but this is my 29th year in business. So had been here a little while in the business, a little while, and seen some ups and downs, but obviously the last 10 years have been pretty crazy. So anyway, welcome to the class. This is something new that it's conversations with buyers and sellers, but we'll actually just talk about some other things in general regarding the market and talking with other people as well, contractors, builders, things like that. So if you have any questions, we'll do, kind of Q&A and work it that way. So I'll kick it off. We'll make some notes, talk about things. If you've got specific questions that about questions you've received or questions you have, dialogue. Jen is great. She can go through scripts with you, obviously, on coaching. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those that ingrain scripts in my head, but I have a lot of natural scripts that, I've just developed over the years, if you want to call it that. It just, a lot of it is off the cuff to me, but
Experience.
it works. It's experience, right? And frankly, a lot of it's just common sense things. So I hope you'll walk away with some nuggets today. And I certainly will take something away. The more you participate, the more I'll take away from you. Well, I'll learn something from these classes, whether I'm leading the class or sitting in the audience. So quickly, by show of hands, is there anyone in here that's been in the business under a year? Anyone? Oh, great, perfect, good, great, well, good. Hopefully it'll be very
A
productive
lot
for
of
you.
them are my coaching clients.
Oh, wonderful,
That's
okay.
I know to show up.
So I know nearly every hand went up. I know Pierce, you've been in here, you've been doing this for how many years now?
I don't want to say.
A long time. Okay. So we got a lot of people in for under a year, and then we got other people that have been over a year. We'll put it that way. Well, you picked the best office for sure. I mean, you picked the best company, you picked the best office. So we're happy to have you here. Obviously with COVID and everything else that's gone on, we don't see each other as much as we used to, but thanks to Jana and the rest of the team, that they're really integrating all of this, keeping us all apprised. The video is great. Love it. Zoom, we've got all this dialed in finally after all these years. So this is wonderful. And thank you again for being here. Again, this is very low tech, guys. So I'm going to take you through some of the stuff that I do. Again, feel free, raise your hand if you have some questions. We can always get into war stories. So if you've got war stories, we'll keep those short, just so I'll keep mine short, just so we don't bore everybody with our personal details, but definitely feel free to jump in. So just my background, I was prior to real estate. I actually managed restaurants a long time ago for Chili's. I had been in the corporate world with Cable Data, who was a cable. Actually, they served more than 50% of the cable TV market. So I would go in and do conversions on offices over to their software, hardware, train all their technicians, their staff, things like that. That involved a lot of travel, which I got tired of quickly. I sold building products for a metal building products manufacturer. So that was the boring stuff like roofing, siding, all metal. It could be copper, aluminum, doesn't matter. Structural decking for high rises. We had projects where all the Home Depot buildings with the orange metal front on them were our product. We did John Wayne Airport. We did a lot of things. But again, it was metal, so it was boring. After 5 years of it, I was kind of fried. And I came back here to Dallas, which is where I grew up. And at the time, I was living in California, so I came back here to Dallas, and I thought I made a short list, like some of you may have done. And like, what do I want to do when I get back? Because I moved here cold. I left my job, came back and said, I'm going to pick something that I'm happy with. And real estate was on that list. And I felt I always had a natural gift for it. After getting into it, I learned that I really did. And it worked out well for me. So hopefully it'll do the same for you. Give it time. It doesn't happen in the first year. You're building, building, building. You'll hit your stride after a few years. So don't give up on yourself. The first year can be tough. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of money that goes out of your pocket. But in this kind of market, I really feel for you because it moves. I mean, it's drinking from that fire hydrant, right? Not the garden hose. So just give yourself time to learn and ask a lot of questions. And thank you for showing up again, because this is the way you can get ahead quickly. Come on in. So let's start off with, I'm going to cover, like I said, we're going to cover conversations with buyers and sellers. But just so you'll have an idea, I'll talk to you, especially since we've got a newer group. We'll talk to how to speak with maybe on-site salespeople. You come across new construction builders in particular. I've got a custom build job going right now, so which is an architect builder. So we'll talk about how to speak with those people, lenders, how to select a good loan officer to work with, because that's a career type of decision. You want to pick a good one and stick with them because there's a lot of benefits to it. Title companies, partnering with good title companies, good escrow officers. Same way with inspectors, contractors, roofers specifically because of all the weather damage we end up having in this area. Photographers, the list goes on and on and on. But of course, buyers and sellers are the main pieces. And then, really, we need to learn how to talk to each other too as agents, because that's a big challenge in this market. With this invention right here and text messaging, everybody hides behind text messages now. They're busy. They don't want to answer the phone. And it's real tough to break through that, especially with multiple offers. So we'll talk about, and you can give me some ideas too, how to get people on the phone. When you're trying to get your offer presented, it's nice to have a quick chat with them because it can save you a lot of time on the back and a lot of heartbreak for your buyers. So with that said, let's start off with buyers, just in general. So pretend like, somebody just called you up cold, like I just got a text message driving over here. Hey, Paul, saw your name on the Keller Williams website. This is what I'm interested in. Now I have to call this lady back. So what do we do for an initial, we call it buyer consultation. I'll tell you what I do, and you can chime in and tell me if you've got any techniques that you like. I have a little buyer profile sheet, and this, I'm happy to share this with anybody too. This is just something I made up years ago when I was at Evie Halliday back in the 90s, and I just adapted it for Keller Williams. But it's I keep tons of these at my desk so I can fill them out quickly, and then I staple them inside just a little manila folder and start putting everything else in there. Of course, I have digital copies of everything too, but this is always nice because you can grab it real fast, flip it open. On it are the basics, and this is, again, no light bulb moment here. Y'all, you want to know who the players are, right? Husband, wife, partners, whatever. Are we talking with a company that's selling, an LLC? Those sort of things. So know who you're talking to. Find out who the owner is, obviously, if you're talking to a seller. But we're discussing buyers here. So find out who the players are. Do we have any helicopter parents, right? Anybody else that's going to be helping make the decision? Anybody contributing money to the transaction that you need to know about? Phone numbers, obviously cell phone numbers. I always ask them, what do they prefer for communication? Do you like to text? Do you like phone calls? Some people take phone calls, but if it's text, I know it's going to be a lot of typing back and forth. So I encourage them, at least for our initial conversations, to try to make it by phone, because I can tell you most, and this is going to sound like overkill, but most buyers that I meet with for the first time, whether it's in person or on the phone, it's a 2-hour conversation. I mean, it just one thing leads to the next, You're like, how in the world can it run that long? But I drove to South Lake last night to meet with a guy that's moving here, and nice price point in South Lake, by the way, right? But he took out a notepad and started taking notes, and 2 hours later, we're still in the hotel lobby with him taking notes. I felt bad for his wife because it was her birthday. I'm like, you need to go back and get back to work, go see your wife. So you might prep them up front, which is always good too. Ask them how much time they have available, because when that first phone call comes in, it's typically Janet can attest to this. Phone call comes in. Hey, Janet, this is Paul. How are you doing? I was referred to you by so-and-so, right?
Super.
Then you start getting into the whole conversation. I'm ready to buy a house. Wonderful. That's the first thing we want to hear. The first thing you need to do is say, okay, well, how long do you have, do you have enough time to talk to me right now? Because I need to discuss some particulars with you because they're very excited to buy. But you have no idea as the agent, if they're pre-approved, pre-qualified, I mean, anything, where's their money coming from and so forth. So ask them if they have enough time to speak and obviously tell them what you anticipate, how long you anticipate it'll take. That way, if you need to set the time aside, if the spouse is not available, it's usually good to get them at least on a call where they're on speaker or something or join in, because you'll find that you'll repeat everything you just told one, you'll have to repeat it to the other. Especially if it's the husband, because he won't tell a wife.
Or
So
you'll forget.
Yeah, I don't forget. And you start all over again. So it's better to do it one time instead of doing it twice, right? So I try to get them both on the phone. I usually don't have a lot of face-to-face first-time contacts. I mean, many times it's the first time I see them is when this is the first house I'm showing. That just seems to be the way it goes now. Same way with buyers riding in cars. I rarely have anybody in my car anymore. I got a one-seater because they just meet me at the properties, and it's been like that for years. And back again when I started back in the 90s, everybody rode with you. Everybody would show up at the office. You would meet them, which leads into a whole lot of other safety questions too that we have. But I'm going to assume that whoever you're working with, that you know them in some form or fashion, that they're a safe person. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I was actually thinking about this exact same thing today. Because it's true that the longer you're in this, the less you drive with them. And because the pandemic, probably true now, but there's so much advantage to driving with
Yes,
them.
there is.
Because you don't build relationships with people and know those extra things that you talk about if you don't spend more time with them.
That's right.
But try when you can. It makes sense.
Seat time is wonderful if you can get it.
So I just did that Monday. I had buyers coming in from Oregon in an Airbnb. I was picking them up in Arlington and going to Mansfield. I just felt like first time I'd seen them in person. We've been talking for months,
Right.
but I wanted that car time.
Right.
And I didn't want them to get lost either.
Yeah.
But I wanted that
Exactly.
car time to get to know them.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say when you're talking about the initial conversation with a husband and wife or partner and partner is a lot of times they want different things. It's good for you.
Yes.
As the agent. who
Exactly.
wants what.
Exactly. Because
Whatever the wife wants.
right on the bottom of this, I have a list of what features and things like that. So yeah, it's very important to get both of them involved in the conversation because it can be, the husband could be, all I care about is the garage.
Yeah.
And that's it. And all of a sudden you didn't learn that the wife wanted all these other things. But the seat time is very important if you can get it. So try to meet with them face to face as early on as possible. That way you can get to know them. They'll also know, once you see that face, it's easy to engage. But yeah, back in the day, we would always have them in the car. In fact, they didn't even have access to the MLS in the beginning. We had to pull everything up for them and select what to see and so forth. So things have changed a lot over time. But the initial consultation, this one, again, happy to share it with you, but it's basic things. Name, address, phone numbers for everybody, good email addresses for everybody. Do they like to text message? The basic things that I ask them are, where are we looking? What areas? Is it school districts important? That way I can know because school districts overlap geographic cities and so forth. What is their anticipated date of move? What are they targeting? What's their price range? Obviously, very important. And I can write some of this down if we get too fast later.
I need to get a copy.
I'll make it.
We can make copies. Yeah.
Besides price range, generally people have a preference towards the age of the home. So that's one thing I always ask them to, the year built. Stay in that. Square footage, what's too small, what's too large. Ask them to give me a boundary. If they just want price to determine that, that's fine. Leave it open-ended. If you notice though, what I'm asking them are input items on our MLS search, right? I only stick with the search fields initially. And that way then I get into the pretty stuff, hardwood floors and all that, but those aren't consistent search fields in the MLS. So I hit those last. So I hit them with the nuts and bolts first and then the pretty stuff last. Bedrooms, baths, garage space, number of living areas, which is not a consistent search field, but I ask them anyway. I ask them, what do they consider a living area? Because it's different than what we use. for living areas, right? Do they need a home office? Do they need 2 home offices? Things like that. Can we adapt a living space to a home office? So we get into a lot of those conversations. Important one too, do they 1-story, 2-story? And if it is, master up or down. That's very important. And you can select that on the MLS, master on the first level. And since they changed our MLS system a week ago, it made it a little confusing. Double check all of your search fields. If you have anything set up in a one-home portal right now, double check it because it could have messed it up. Yes, ma'am.
Can I say 2 things?
Yes.
Okay, so one on the searches right now, I'm so glad you brought that up. You need to, on some things, you need to be a little more general for a while until, because nobody's going to go in and fix the old listings. So when you're looking at comps, if you're too specific on something that's new, you're going to kick out everything old because nobody's going to update sold listings, right? So I talked to the guy at CCR about this yesterday, and a couple things, and I can't give any great examples at the moment, though. Just know that you may need to be a little more general until more new listings come in, and then that'll be fine. And the other thing I think is really great too, the other question is, do you have any specific furniture that needs to fit in a particular place so that you know what you got to deal with?
Yeah.
Got a piano, got a whatever.
Exactly. That's a great point. Yeah.
Table.
Yeah, a big item like that, especially. And you'll learn, if you didn't ask that, you'll learn it real quick when you start walking through a house with them.
If they're coming out of town, you need to ask them in advance so they can measure it before they come.
Yes. And speaking of which, I've got one in here, but I'll show you. One thing I always carry with me is a laser measure, right? So you can get these at Home Depot, you can get them that reach any lengths. This one's up to 35 feet, which is typically good for just about every house, but you can get them up to 50 or even 100. And this thing's great because I won't do it here, but you just set it against the wall, point it, and it'll take the measure from the back end all the way to the wall. It's nice to have either with you in the car, in your pocket, whatever, purse, when you're walking through a house, because they won't bring a tape measure and it never fails. It's like, how big is this room? If it's an empty house, they misjudge it. If it's full of furniture, they misjudge it. Doesn't matter. So it's nice to have this. This one's Bosch.
Okay.
And this was about, I think I caught this on sale at Home Depot in the $20-something range, but they're probably around 30, 35 bucks.
I mean, you can get the fancy ones up to 100 if you really wanted to do
Or you can be
calculations.
like me and use the old fashioned measuring tape.
Measuring tape. I've got a measuring tape. Guess what? If the battery's dead, I have a spare battery, but if it's dead, you got to have a backup. And these, by the way,
It'd be good for.
you don't necessarily need this just for showing. You got a list of property. If you're not hiring Aaron or someone to do that for you, you'll need this to measure your rooms. And it makes it really quick.
Ceiling height would be good.
Ceiling heights are wonderful, right? Somebody says that. I've had people say, will my sofa fit here? All you have to do is walk over here and do that, and it'll give you the length of it from there. So the neat thing about these two is if you hold, actually, when you press the button and you walk towards the wall, it'll remeasure as you get closer. So, that way, if they tell you a specific length for something, you've got it right there. So master up or down. Swimming pool, very important, right? Some people love them, hate them. Some people like, I'd love to have one. In this market, we've seen prices of pools go up from what used to be a $40,000 or $50,000 pool is now 100, or more. And a build schedule of 9 months to a year. I've got a neighbor, it's been a year since they've started their project, still not finished. I've got one client that, of course, is a different price point home, but their pool and backyard, they just spent $450. And it was a 1-year project with a cool virtual flyby, all that of this. I mean, it was $5,000 just for the design of the pool and the video to go what the pool will look like and all that. It's pretty cool. But yeah, pool's very important because as summer approaches, the weather gets warmer, everybody wants one. So find out up front. Obviously, prep them, and you'll learn this the more you do it, but prep them on the likelihood that they can get a pool. If they say, I have to have a pool, and they're a $300,000 buyer, they're probably not going to get a pool. And
Go to Walmart.
a Walmart, exactly. I've done that. I've actually bought those little things for people before. Sorry, here's your pool.
Or meet your neighbors.
Or will a community pool work too?
Or just meet your neighbors.
Or your neighbors, right?
Your neighbors.
You can put a gate in between on the fences. Other than that, like I said, we talked about cities, school districts, things like that. Then we get into the preferences. What gives you the warm fuzzies, right? Is it hardwood floors? Is it this? Is it that? Gas cooktops, things of that nature. And again, the thing that's nice about learning how homes are built and learning, in my opinion, you should always be at an inspection, at least for the end of it, not the whole inspection, but for the end of it. Hold the buyer's hand. listen to what the inspector has to say. And you learn every time. So when you're showing a home, like I've had 2 people tell me in the past week, we have to have a gas cooktop. And they're looking for a single story home. So guess what? It doesn't have to be installed. We can install it easily off the furnace, down the wall, put the gas cooktop in if it's only electric in the house. A lot of these builders will plumb for gas and electric. But if it's not there and these people are worried about it, I don't want that to prevent them from buying the home. We'll get an estimate to run that gas line over and put the gas cooktop in. Done it multiple times. Pardon me, including my own house. So I know what it costs, and it's not a hard project. But the more you learn, the more benefit you can be to them.
Commute. Where are you gonna be working? Commute. How long are you willing to be in your car?
Yes, exactly. That's some of the things too, because people, when they're factoring in on price, and I don't know if you heard that, toll charges and how far are you commuting? If they say, I want to be within 30 minutes of the airport, that's very important. If they're telling you when they want to look in Anna, it ain't going to happen. Depends on which airport, right? If it's like McKinney, sure. But yeah, commutes, absolutely important. You know, on One Home Portal too, you can search by commute distance. Everybody aware of that? Yeah. Okay. All right. And you know, when I say One Home, everybody's aware of what One Home Portal is. Are you aware of that? Okay. So in the MLS system, you can set up a client, right? You can go in and input the client's name, save their email addresses.
Your matrix.
Yeah, in the MLS matrix, right? Well, I mean, everybody should know what the MLS is,
Yeah,
right?
it's
We're all
mine
using
where
it.
it says that's where it says my matrix, and then you go in and set like auto email.
Yeah, it's on your dashboard, your main dashboard when you're in the MLS, right? And so one of those, you click on it on the main dashboard and it'll give you your searches, your contacts, all that right there. And so you can input a contact, or if you're already doing a search, let's say you just took all this from them, and you're actually on the phone with them, and you say, how about I do a quick search while we're talking and you're setting it up. You can save the search to them as a new contact and go ahead and release that information to them right then. But what it shows up on, the way it shows up on there is a One Home Portal. And so that if you get that set up and they start using it, it will show you on your dashboard every time they log in and look at the day and time they log in and view properties. And it will show you a log of all the emails that go out to them for property matches. And well, that's a whole nother class, by the way.
I'm gonna say, come to Coach's Corner, I'll show you all that.
Yeah, but that's something that's that you need to be using, because otherwise they will be out searching on Redfin, Zillow, you name it, trying to find their home. And guess what? All that data is dated. Most of those homes are already sold, they're under contract, and they're not getting notified as soon as the house hits the market, which is very important. So the One Home Portal is a must, in my opinion. That's on my list here. I do it for every client and I do it right away. The guy last night from South Lake sitting in the hotel, as soon as we left the lobby, I was on this thing and I did it from an iPad. You can do it from anywhere. Put it all in. He got the email about 5 minutes later and texted me and said, thanks so much. My wife's already looking at the properties. You know, that's how quick they jump on it. So I'll get a copy of this to you, but I know that's not an in-depth conversation for buyers, but this is where you start, right? We got to find out what they're looking for, when they want to buy it, who's participating in it. Some of the other questions that we get into, which go along with this, because on here I've got, how did you find me? Who were you referred by? Because I need to thank those people. And most of my business at this point, I'd say all of it, virtually all of it, is personal referral. So I need to reach out to these people and find out who referred them to me. I always put a date on here, because some people you end up working with for an extended period of time. It's nice to know when you started. Also have a note for if they're working with a relocation company or a specific lender. And that's important as well. Relocation companies, you'll learn relocation companies, if they've got an employee transferring in and you're fortunate to be able to keep your own referral, they're going to ask for a percentage, especially when we get to the listing side. We've talked about that.
So then how are you setting expectations for buyers these days?
Good question. Yeah, and I've got a bunch of notes about that too. So with the pace of this market, you need to prepare them that obviously there's a lot of competition, multiple offers. It's going to scare them if they're first-time home buyers. It'll even scare them if they've owned several homes. It's just intimidating. But the conversation with the buyers goes something like this. You know, first of all, how quickly are you looking to move? Where are the funds coming from? Do we have a contingency sale? Because contingency sale in this market can be a deal killer. You know, it can. Is there any way we
Because
do it?
because
Because You've got people, it's just one extra layer in your offer that others aren't going to have. Cash buyers won't have a contingency sale. Pre-approved buyers without a home to sell won't have a contingency sale. Contingency sale just means their equity's in this house or debt is in this house that they have to relieve in order to be able to qualify to buy the new one. And so there's ways, there's bridge loans, things like that, which some lenders still do. I think, I know for a fact some of them still do. There's ways of working with the contingency, but the fact is a contingency right now in this market, I would say would put them at the bottom of the list if you're getting offers. The seller is going to be concerned about, will this close? And regardless whether the buyer's house is under contract or if they haven't put it if they haven't even put it on the market and they can't buy without selling it, we got a whole nother discussion. And we need to file, first of all, that's a listing opportunity for me, right? So that should be a discussion. But then secondly, we need to find out the timing for all of that, because they're going to be, people always put the cart before the horse. You'll learn every time you talk with somebody, they're always ready to go, but they haven't taken the steps to be ready to go. And part of the steps are talking with the lender, which is on this list. Again, contingency sale, you have anything to sell, things of that nature. Where your funds coming from, that's very important. If they're going to borrow out of their 401k, that needs to be a discussion they have with their lender. But it's nice for you to know, because that's an extra layer when they can access those funds. And so I'm not going to take them out and start showing them houses this weekend if it's going to take them 3 weeks to access their funds, unless you can overlap all this with a closing date. All right. But I'll also tell you, I don't personally meet anyone, show anyone properties, nothing until I know they're ready to buy. If I set them up on the One Home portal so they can start looking and put them in touch with the lender and all that. But until I get a pre-approval letter, they're not in my car. I'm not meeting them. I've done this too many times, and it's a huge waste of time to find out that you've just taken time to show someone and they can't even buy. And you'll kick yourself. And
That's the girl that was here earlier.
Mhm.
That's what they do. Their
Yes,
homework.
Homeward, yes.
Yeah.
And so there's different ways of doing it, but just don't, trust me, you'll get anxious. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Gas is for.
Gas is
Yeah.
$4.09 a gallon coming up the road here. You'll, again, honestly, to this day, do I make exceptions? Yes. Do I kick myself afterwards? Sometimes, because it'll still happen. I still get excited just like they do. But the fact is, try not to. What I tell them, part of the conversation that I have with them is, you're excited. You're going to be looking at homes. You're going to be browsing other websites too, by the way. And the important thing about the One Home portal is that that's up-to-date data. So if you or any of your friends or relatives or anyone else finds something on another website that you're excited about, text it to me. Okay. That way I can check it out and see if it's available. Because if you find it and it's not on the One Home portal, I want to know why. Why didn't our MLS system find it? It's rare that happens. But if it is, majority of the time it's a data input error, or they changed your criteria. They said, I want to spend up to $350. And guess what? The house is $375. So then they're sending you a text. I'm interested in this one. First thing I do when I get the text is like, okay, initially I know they've overshot their budget, right? So my first text back to them is, do you want me to change your search criteria? Because this one is outside of our range, which is a whole other conversation about where the offers are going. If they're a $400,000 buyer, should they stop looking at $350? Because these offers are, I just showed a listing McKinney, listed at $350, just found out the final sales price was $463.
Wow.
Yeah, 30% over list. And they had over 100 offers. It's just ridiculous. So it's nice to know these things up front. Again, you're working with the buyer, but the more you know about them, and some of the conversations that we have is, and I'm going to hit these just kind of machine gun fire, how we get paid and how we can help them, right? Because buyers are thinking, especially first-time buyers, I've got to spend all this money to buy a house, and what about you? They don't know how we get paid. The multiple listing service sets up how we get paid with cooperating fee. And of course, that's going to vary. But I explained to them that on the MLS, the fees may vary, but the fact is the listing agent, the seller is paying the listing agent to sell the house, and they're putting in with cooperating compensation, which is the way we get paid. And I talked to them about some of the forms we're going to have, the buyer's rep agreement, the information about brokerage services, all these other disclosure forms that we have, and how that works. But mainly that I'm self-employed. Okay. I'm working for them. It's my fiduciary duty. We're going to put that in writing. If they're on a buyer's rep, their interests are ahead of mine. So when it comes to shopping, negotiating, anything else, I'm looking out for them. That also means I may talk them out of a house they're interested in buying. It's just the way it is. I'm in it for the long haul, and I've always made it clear to people, I'm there for you. When you're looking at a house, you're looking at all the pretty things, and I'm looking at the nuts and bolts. That's just it. I'm watching over your shoulder. I'm looking at future resale value. Right now, we could build a house right there in the middle of Preston Road, and somebody would buy it. Yeah, just because they're desperate. But later, the market shifts, and it will eventually. If they still own that home and they call me to sell it, I don't want to be the one that says you shouldn't have bought that in the middle of Preston Road, right? Because I would have said that to them up front when they were shopping. So I always let them know that. I learned early on that when I showed a house to a buyer that it was backing to the railroad tracks, and I actually had them step out back, look at the railroad tracks, look over the fence, then talk to them about it. When they were walking out of the house, they said, "Wow, you're not like the other agents." And that's when you light bulb moment, right? You're not like the other agents. You actually talked us out of buying this house. And it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I? Well, it's not the way a lot of people work. So you will build clients for life if you look out for them, and they'll see that and they'll trust you. And that's how I build my business. That's how my business sustains itself. Just be honest with people and look out for them. Let's see. I've got so many of these things, guys. I'm sorry. You got 4 to add? Okay. We'll see if I cover them. And
Okay.
you keep your list going, so I'll have to add it to this. So we talked about contingency sales and all this, the initial consultation. Like I said, let's just hit some highlights. There's all sorts of tips and tricks and tactics when you're showing homes. And it doesn't apply as much in this market, but will apply later. You may have heard of agents about stacking homes. They'll show the best one first or the best one last, things like that. I don't really get into all that nonsense. It's just, the right house is the right house for them. In this market, they're lucky to even have one home to look at, let alone 5 or 10, right? So when I'm showing a house, what I'm looking for and what I tell them is, as soon as we drive up to the house, I've already done the research as far as Google Maps and everything else to see if there's location issue. But when we drive up, the first thing I'm looking at is the roof and the landscaping, and really see if we see any cracks as soon as we walk up to the house, right? We go in the house, then while they're looking at all the pretty stuff, I'm looking at the walls and the ceilings and the vent registers to see if they're dirty, dusty, if people have been changing the air conditioning. This sounds silly, but that's what I'm there for. I don't really, they're going to tell me if the floor plan fits, right? They're going to tell me if they like the finish up. I'm looking at the age of the appliances. I'll walk around, look at the air conditioner to see how old it is. When I showed this weekend, I told her it was built in 2007, deal word. And I told the lady, if it's the original air conditioner, it's probably R22, not 410A. That means nothing to you, right? R22 has been phased out, very expensive to get. 410A is the new refrigerant. So it's going to be expensive. She won't recharge it. She'll replace it, the whole system. So now we're talking about not just a quick Freon charge if the inspector comes back and says it's not cooling properly. We're talking about possibly replacing the entire system just because it's cost effective. But knowing those things to look for, again, it sets you apart. And that's really what you're looking to do, frankly. If you can set yourself apart, you're just not what I'm afraid of is this is what we're going to end up being, because there's too many of them out there. Hey, welcome, come on in, tell us what you think. How much service did you provide to your client doing that, right? Zero. They can call, and we know the companies they can call and get that done. It's the same company that schedules 5 appointments on my listing and cancels 4 out of the 5 because they keep bouncing. I'll say the name Redfin, bouncing the client to the next available showing rep. It's just, they're just opening doors, right? So set yourself apart. The other thing I look at is breaker panels, right? If it's, again, a lot of this may be over your head at this point in your career. But breaker panels are important if you've got a Federal Pacific, right? And Federal Pacific is an older breaker panel that it was a known fire hazard. If you don't know that, your inspector is going to surprise your buyer by telling them that. So if you can tell your buyer as you're walking through the house and open that breaker panel, which might be in a closet with those age homes, that, hey, first of all, this is located in a closet, which isn't up to code anymore. And it's also Federal Pacific. It says it right there on it. It's a known fire hazard. But I tell them, don't worry, don't panic. The house may be 50 years old. It hadn't burned down yet. You just need to be aware of this, because guess what? Your inspector is going to find it and tell you. And I don't want you to panic now that we're under contract. I want you to know it now. And then we'll talk about what it costs to replace a breaker.
What age home are you talking about?
Federal Pacific, actually, we've seen them all the way up through the 80s. And they started, well, I've seen them back in the 50s because two of my homes were built in the 50s, my personal homes, they had Federal Pacific in them. And I didn't change them out. I left them. I sold them that way. So it depends on a comfort level. The thing that, again, I'm trying to avoid are surprises after the fact where the buyer just, when they hit that inspection, because part of our conversation is when we make an offer, and I always call it an offer, not a contract. They're going to call it a contract. When we make an offer on a property, it's just an offer. It's written, you've signed it, but unless the seller accepts it as is, the way you wrote it, you're not under contract. And guess what? If you're lucky enough to get an option period anymore, then you still have the ability to terminate. Or if it's got an HOA, you still have the ability to terminate if you have that contingency in there. So don't let this panic you. But I tell them, all of them, is that you're going to be nervous during this entire process. Once we make the offer, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be pins and needles till we hear back. You're going to be very excited and then extremely nervous when we go under contract. And your nerves are not going to settle down until after we've inspected the house. So once we inspect and you know what you're dealing with, then things will calm down and you'll close. And once you tell them that, now they've got it in their mind, like, okay, I'm not unusual. I'm not freaking out over this. That
Do
sort
you
of thing.
inspect right before you close?
No, the inspections are,
But do you do another
oh,
inspection?
walkthrough, final
Yeah.
walkthrough? Yes, I always do.
Before you-
I always ask the buyer, some don't even want to, but generally even if they don't, I'll go over and do it. Just make sure nothing's changed.
Okay.
Because at some point, which is on this list also, the transfer of keys with the other agent, with the seller. Sometimes the other agent wants you to take the key from the key box. So, and last month I offered, the agent was in the Park Cities. I said, how about, the house was up here. I said, how about I take your key box off, give me the shackle code, I'll bring your sign and key box to you at the title company along with the key. Just goodwill, right? I had to do the walkthrough anyway. It saved him a trip to North Dallas, that sort of thing. So play fair, play nice, and everybody will be nice to you, hopefully. Let's see, what else was I going to ask you? Jump in with what you have.
Okay, so you hit on the option period, but I did a little bit more to that.
Mhm.
I asked people, when's the last time you bought or sold a house, and was it here? Because if they're not from here, if they're from out of state, they may not have that option period. So I let them know how that works. And that helps a lot, because then they realize they don't have to have such full-blown buyer's remorse because they have some outs in there. So definitely I tell them about the option period. I do my own net sheets for them, even on just a general price, so that they know, like, really, do we have this kind of money? Like, what do you need, including the reserves that they'll need if they're doing a mortgage, but then also so they know the timing of when they have to pay what. So that by having that discussion, you're like, okay, we have to have this money up front, you'll pay the inspection at time, and you don't pay this much till the end. So I do that too.
And net sheets can be found where?
Well, I do my own, I'm sure.
On an app?
No, I made myself, I have a CPA license too, so numbers is just my thing. And years ago when I started, I made my own 2 spreadsheets, because it's like a lender will give you, I don't even think they call it a good faith estimate anymore, but they would give you the numbers, but it's so generic, and I'm not generic. I usually can be within $100 of reality, and I will change it as we go along and find out facts, and I'm calling the HOA and finding how much the fees are, and I'm looking at the taxes and figuring out what time of year it is, so do they have to pay them because it's November, or do they not have to pay them? Like it's like so specific to the house. There'll be a general one, of course, for the general price range, so they know, so that we kind of know we're starting off on the right foot. And I know the lender's talking to them too, but they may not always do everything on good timing or so specifically, and I'm just very specific. So.
But they can get, so since we've got, I think you walked in afterwards, but majority of the group is 1 year or less in the business. So if they want to, if you've never done a net sheet, then the title company could help you with one, the lender could help you with one. The title company's not gonna be the best source for buyers, by the way. But the lender can certainly do one for you, right? They can call it a net sheet, they'll call it a worksheet, they'll call it all sorts of things, but basically that's it. There's apps that you can have on your phone through the title companies to let you do a quick on your phone, what's it gonna cost you to purchase? Again, some of the nice thing about getting them set up with the lender right away is because, you know, Janet, now here's type A detail, right? I'm gonna take control of everything.
Hey.
You may not want to go that way right off the bat when you're working with somebody. So have their lender do it for them, right? That way they can discuss some of the private things like how much cash is available. Do we need to do a 5% down instead of 10% down? Things like that.
I'd also add that some clients might not want all that information.
I mean,
You have to read your client.
true.
Never had
Exactly.
advice says, no, I don't want to know what we're doing.
Or they may want it in pieces. They may want to know how much the option fee is.
I've never had a
Right.
client that
And, you
would be clueless.
Yeah, just have some way of preparing them for how much money they're going to need,
Yeah.
right? Some way of doing it, because a lot of them think all I need is my down payment,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, right.
And they don't know the difference between FHA, VA, conventional. They have no idea what's going to be required. They don't know what escrows are, right? So have that conversation with them. But again, if it's beyond your depth or you just don't even want to go there, the lender will do this for you, which again is coming up on the lender portion of our discussion when we talk to lenders. I'm going to try to stay on track here too, guys. Did you have something
Yeah, I
else?
have two
to-
quick
okay.
things. One of the things, like some people kind of balk at getting pre-qualified. And so it's just one of the things I say, I have all these common things I say all the time, is, you know what, it's not about whether or not it's not about saying that, like, I'm not worried about whether or not you qualify. It's just about, we have to know the picture one, because I have to know how to write your offer, right? And I don't have time, you don't have time in this market to be starting from scratch at the time. I mean, I know that you're not really always going to get them pre-qualified or the way you want. Some people are just stubborn, but it is, I tell them it's about, I don't want to show you a house that you can't afford, and I don't want you to miss out on a house that you could afford, but you didn't know it. And that helps a lot to do it that way, because then it's not like you're just trying to say, oh, you might not qualify. It's just saying, we want to make sure you're not missing something that you could have qualified for, but you didn't know.
Right.
So I think that helps a lot.
And our loan officers too, good loan officer already has the script down. So he's a good loan officer will echo what you just told the buyer.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's a marriage.
And it's about the timing too, having it done so that you can know what, like, can you close quickly so you can be more competitive? And then just the general, like, if they're coming from someplace else or they haven't bought lately, they may not realize, oh, you're gonna get a seller's disclosure notice. So we're gonna see the house. In most cases, you're gonna get a seller's disclosure notice, and then you're gonna be able to inspect it too. So that helps to alleviate all that. And then you said one thing that it's not how I work. You said the buyer representation agreement, or you said that the MLS determines how you get paid. And I was like, oh, no, my buyer representation agreement determines how I'm gonna
Right.
get paid. So
Well, you need to explain to them that, yeah, the buyer's rep will buy the MLS, but in the majority of cases, right? Because the buyer's rep agreement basically commits the buyer to paying you if you can't collect it from the seller via the listing broker, right? So there's exceptions. What if it's a FSBO? What if it's a builder, right? Which are not in MLS. So there are exceptions.
no, I'm saying just because MLS says something less than 3 doesn't mean my clients don't already know they're gonna make up the difference. So MLS isn't determining what I'm getting paid. My buyer representation agreement
Yes.
determines what I'm gonna get paid.
Yes, correct. But your buyer's representation agreement protects you to get paid, period. All right, period, right? By the buyer, but it will explain to them, because I do strike throughs on the buyer's rep, by the way. I've struck through, I can't tell you, probably 90% of them. It takes the burden off the buyer to pay my fee, because I know we're buying directly from the MLS. But the buyer's rep agreement will protect you if they decide if you put 3% in there, that means 3%. If the MLS says you're getting paid 2.5%, the buyer's responsible for the other 0.5% for that buyer's rep agreement. And it's enforceable, right? There was an agent I worked with here in our office years ago that I listened to him have the conversation on the phone with the buyer, enforcing the fact that the buyer had to pay him the 3% because the builder didn't. And it was the most uncomfortable conversation, but he did it so professionally. Like, that was great. Now, the closing I just had this morning,
Sure.
guess who paid my 3%?
The buyer.
And it was a multiple listing service home that paid 3%, but my buyer paid it. Want to know how?
Part of the contract.
This is something that you're going to start seeing. Multiple offers. My lender, who's great, said, hey, if you guys are concerned about appraisal and you're concerned about cash out of pocket, because we're doing the appraisal addendum, which means you're absorbing a gap there if the appraisal comes in short. I'm assuming everybody's familiar with the appraisal addendum, right? So if you're concerned about all this, how about I give you a lender credit for 3%, which will pay for, we're going to adjust your interest rate, but it will pay for your buyer's broker fee to Paul, to Keller Williams. And that will allow you to come in lower on your sales price, but compete with higher offers. So think about it.
Wow.
So $400,000 house, let's just say, that's $12,000. So my $400,000 buyer paying my commission just competed with a $412 buyer where they're having to pay that. Now, you got to be careful because, and I explained this to the buyers, the listing broker doesn't have to take the other 3%. They've agreed to the seller for maybe 6%. 3% of that was offered. But if I'm taking that out in the contract, they could still charge the seller 6%. So it really didn't do me any good. But I have that conversation with the listing agent. Now, also tell you, the listing agent didn't understand it. I mean, they were just, what do you mean the buyer's paying the commission? I got the loan officer to call the listing agent. Still didn't understand it. Works for a team. So that was understandable. Calls the team lead. Team lead gets on the phone and she's irate. Why?
Why does it
She's
matter?
irate. Doesn't at all. She didn't understand.
Right.
This is ruining our business. Wait a minute. How many offers have you ever received that the buyer is paying the commission? And ask you if you're willing to adjust your fee with the seller. She didn't understand all that. It's horrible. You're ruining it. Wait a minute. Is your seller still netting the same amount of money or more? And if you don't want to explain that to your seller, bad on you, right? Guess what? We got the deal, multiple offers. We got it. We closed it this morning. So Larry?
I was gonna say, one question I ask buyers now is why in this market do you want to buy?
Yeah.
And then I shut up and listen.
Good.
If they're not motivated to buy now, or they don't have to buy, I may choose not to work with them because you'll just waste your time.
Yes.
If they don't have a timeline, if they don't have the right motivation, if they're not pre-approved already, and if they won't sign a buyer rep agreement,
There's your answer.
not wasting my time.
Any of the above, right? That's
Those are
very
my
important. We
rules.
should have started with that. Yeah, thank you. We should have started with that. That's perfect.
Marcia gave me those rules.
Yeah, no, but it's good. Again, that's something that I do. I actually do all that when I'm going through this. I'm finding the motivation. That's why I'm asking to move by date and things like that. And I'm seeing if there's any motivation there, because if there's not, and again, I don't put them in cars. I tell them you can go out to open houses, look at all open houses you want. You know, you can go to builders, but be careful because we're going to talk about going into builders without me. I tell them you're free to do whatever you want. I'm just not doing it with you till we know you're ready to buy. You know, now, if you show up and you produce a pre-approval letter from me the day after we have this discussion and you say, I'm ready to buy and all this stuff, I'm on board with you. But if it takes you, like Larry was saying, a month to get this done, that just tells me you're not that motivated. So why should I be motivated to put you ahead of all my clients that have already done this to get my time? Again, your time is super valuable. I mean, super valuable. I would say more so than your clients, because you're being pulled every different direction. You will be working, trust me, nights and weekends, late nights. I can tell you Friday night was 11 o'clock. Saturday night was 9 o'clock for me. Last night, I didn't get finished till about 11 again. This is a full-time job that they don't understand. And what makes it worse is this market, because it's taking so much more effort to get buyers under contract. Sellers is great, but then you've also got that burden, multiple offers on sellers that takes an inordinate amount of time.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes, sir.
Would you use that language when you're speaking to a buyer? That sort of line in the sand? Why should I do that with you?
With a little sugar on it.
Right.
With the sugar on it, right? Yeah. I come off harsh because we're talking
No, that's
shop
fine. That's
here.
why I'm asking the
And
question.
hopefully this Zoom meeting won't go live on YouTube or something. But
Well,
it will, exactly. But yeah, this is really industry conduct. I have the same conversations with them. I just don't come across like a hammer, but they need to know. I've had buyer, all of you will. You'll have buyers you fire. You will. They just won't. You'll learn it's not worth working with them. You'll have sellers that you fire. In this market, you probably won't, but in any other time, you'll have sellers that you fire. You know, and just chalk it up. I used to, every class I used to start off when I taught was, you know, guys, I lose $1 million or more a year in business. It just disappears. Every year I count on it. I can tell you this morning, telling Pierce, I've been over here. I was leaving for closing, got a call from a seller that said, anyway, she told me that they weren't gonna list the house with me. It was a slam dunk. I mean, it was a slam dunk, but that was $21,000 check that just like that, right? 650 house, $700,000 house. It's going to happen. It's going to happen with buyers. Buyers are going to go out and do stupid things and you can't control them. If you don't have a buyer's rep signed and they show up at a builder's going to put them under contract. They don't care about you. They're going to put them under contract. If they show up, and I've had this done, my buyers have shown up at an open house when it's real busy, and it's not in this market, but it was prior. When it's very busy and the listing agent has actually stood there and said, we have several offers. If you want to buy the house, you need to do it now with me. The buyer had already told them we're working with Paul. I didn't have a buyer's rep sign. You know, it was a trust issue at that point. They were referred to me, said, you guys do what you do. We'll get all this done at the appropriate time. They walked in, guess what? They bought the house. Now, were they taken advantage of? I suspect so. But,
So you
know,
missed out on that
I missed that one. Yeah.
because you didn't have the buyer's agreement.
I didn't have the buyer's rep sign. That's my fault. But it's their fault for being duped. It's my fault for not protecting myself. Because even if they had been duped, I still could have enforced it with them and said, you have a buyer's rep sign with me. You still owe me 3%. You still owe my broker. It's never our money. It's our broker, 3%. But this was back in the 90s. It's back in the 90s. Things were a little different then. Buyer's reps, people were back in the 90s, by the way, agents were so nervous about getting buyer's rep signed because they just didn't do it unless they had to. It was like, would you please, you know, begging people to sign it. It's like, no. It's different day and age now, Janet.
So usually on my buyer consultations or listing consultations, I will say to them, I'm here to find out if I'm the right agent for you, and if you're the right client for me.
See how sweet she is? I mean, that's perfect. That tone, yeah. Great, that's great, perfect.
You got a similar.
Yeah, you do.
I can be, listen,
Yeah,
I
you
can
can
be
be.
on the phone and in person. I'm much gentler. Sometimes when I get in this is a venting, right? So, but yes, the way you talk to people, the way you phrase it, again, that's what scripts and dialogues are good about. Again, if you shadowed me, you'd see a different Paul.
Oh, really?
The way I interact with people, it's more kid glove. I really am a huge babysitter, I'll tell you, for the most part. I do spend a lot of time with people that I shouldn't. I'm not saying people that I shouldn't. A lot of time that doesn't necessarily need to be spent, I still spend it with. And I can give you example after example, but that's just the way I do business. I don't know any way different. Could I shortcut on things? Yeah, but that's just not me. I'm hand holding.
So I know what I say, but what do you say when somebody refuses to sign the buyer rep agreement? What do you say?
I've never had anybody do it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't.
Or if they question.
Yeah, if they question
why it's necessary.
If they question why they have to sign it,
Uh-huh.
the same reason a seller signs a listing agreement. I mean, I've had these conversations. I've never had anybody refuse to sign. But like when a house is listed for sale, you know, the seller hires this agent, this broker to represent them to get the house sold. So if you want representation exclusively as a fiduciary and all of my time and effort, and by the way, all of my experience and all of my negotiating skills and every other thing that we learn, it needs to be in writing. I mean, first of all, my broker requires it to be in writing. My license is held by my broker, right? So this isn't even my choice. I mean, I can take it out of my hands. So there's
Their office requires me.
my offer required. Yeah, my office requires it. This protects you and me, right?
Another thing I throw out as a joke is, can you go see your doctor without doing paperwork?
Yeah. And the thing I tell them too is, look, 'cause I've had buyers do this. They're shopping down in Red Oak and they're shopping up here in Frisco. Maybe I don't want to work Red Oak. So I tell them that you can sign a separate buyer's rep agreement for that area. Buyer's rep spells out specifically where are you working? It could be counties, cities, anything. So I do put that in the buyer's rep. And if they want to work Red Oak and I'm up here and I don't know Red Oak or I don't want to go to Red Oak, let's find somebody else down there for you. Now I can make the referral. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and get
It's
paid
still
on
gonna
it,
be.
get paid on it, exactly.
It's so interesting, can I add to what he said, because I think it's so easy for us to have like our defensive comeback as opposed to, why do you not want to cite it? I ask him like, why are you asking? Why?
And when you explain it to them, the protections and how it, that, I mean, that's a guarantee of your time, your expertise and all that. They should understand. If they don't at that point, I don't know. Go ahead, Jen.
So Larry, what I tell them is, if you don't have a signed representation agreement with me, I'm working for the seller. And there's some fiduciary, there's some information I'm not allowed to
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
Now, with this agreement, I'm an open book to you, and I can tell you everything to do with this listing.
Right.
And should I hear anything from the other side, I now have the permission and the fiduciary responsibility to share it with you. But until I have that, technically I'm representing the seller.
And that's a good lead into the next items on here is, when you're talking to your buyer, what am I hiring you for? Other than to open doors, right? And maybe you're good at looking for things wrong with the house, Paul. Well, why else am I hiring you? Well, you're hiring me because, first of all, when we find homes that you like, I'm going to run a market analysis. I'm going to tell you what I think the house is worth based on what's sold. It doesn't have any bearing on what anybody's paying for it at all. But you're hiring me for that. We're going to pull the tax record. We need to know what you're going to be paying taxes, things like that. Maybe do an estimate like Janet does. The other things that goes along with this business. Any other disclosure notices, foundation notices. I mean, you'd be shocked at the number of things you end up doing for your clients. A lot of times it's calling a foundation company to get a warranty that the listing agent didn't get, to find out if it's still transferable, find out what the fee is to transfer it, to get the form. There's a lot of sales that you're involved in. You can only be as good as the listing agent, and then you have to take over some of the stuff the listing agent should have done, right? I mean, some of the things you have to chase down because they'll gladly put it off on you if they can. Some of them will. The really good ones, which we're going to get into, the really good ones will do a lot of homework up front. They'll get the HOA documents up front, the resale certificate, all that stuff. But there's a reason why they should do that too. Let's see. So we talked about promulgated forms. We're going to throw that under category of promulgated forms, buyer's rep agreement, IBS, our affiliated business disclosure, all that can be done on zip forms through DocuSign, real easy. Okay. The only personal form I have is this one. The rest of it's all on zip forms. We can get any of those documents too. If you have any trouble finding them, let us know, let Jana know. I do talk to them because we have a state promulgated contract and people don't understand what that is. Tell them this has been prepared by the Lawyer Broker Committee for the state, Texas Real Estate Commission. It's a fill in the blank contract, but that doesn't mean it's easy. That means we can manipulate the contract for certain things, like the buyers that closed this morning, that paid my buyer's commission. They waived every contingency in the offer. Never had anybody do that and pay the commission. They paid for the HOA documents and the resale certificate themselves. They ordered it themselves. Seller didn't have to pay for anything. They paid for all the transfer fees for the HOA. I mean, they paid the title policy. They gave up their option period. They waived every contingency in our state promulgated contract. And I said, you do know that your triple the amount of earnest money you put up is all in jeopardy because you've got no protections anymore other than title cloud.
They sound motivated though.
They were very motivated. And guess what? Because our offer, they paid my commission, we beat out the higher offer and got the deal. And had they not done that,
412.
do what?
It was.
It was in that ballpark, yeah. But I mean, I was just giving you a round
Yeah.
number. But yeah, that was the deal that I was explaining to you. But they waived every contingency. So I explained to the buyers that we are using state promulgated forms. A little bit, I take them through. This is part of that 2-hour process that they can indulge. That I take them through. These are some challenges that you're going to have in this market: competition, multiple offers, cash versus investors versus move up, move down buyers versus transferees. You're competing against everybody, and this is what you need to be prepared for. And if you would like a copy of the promulgated contract, I'm more than happy to even fill one out as an example for you and send it over. Don't send them past clients, right?
Yes.
fill one out, send it over to them along with the other disclosure forms. That way they're familiar with it,
Right.
start walking them
You
through it.
might have somebody who's a reader, and they're a reader, you better get that stuff to
Yeah.
them sooner, because you don't have time, you don't have time to start from scratch, but it's time to write an offer, right? So I will send them the blank form so they can read them. And also I say, because like if I'm out of town or not with you, and we're writing the offer, then it's easier for them to have it in front of them, so they can be going over the
Right.
draft while I'm talking to them on the phone.
And you can save it to zip forms, because guess what? When they get ready to write an offer, you already got all their information in zip forms now. You've got them as the buyers, their contact information.
So for these guys, it'll be command.
It'll be command, right? Well, so
Most of
I,
the new ones. I
yeah,
still use
exactly.
that one.
I still use,
Yeah,
I use
see.
command. So I do all the forms off the MLS. There's multiple ways to do this, but off the MLS on your dashboard, zip forms. I click on zip forms. I fill out all the forms. You can either save them on your computer or you can import them to command. Right. And I'm so used to doing it that way. I also have my templates set up in there, buyer template, seller template, and all that. So it already drops the forms in for me. But that, again, nuts and bolts, but just keep in mind, if you do that for them in advance, then they get a free look, so to speak. It'll save you time on the back end, because guess what happens? Like most people, you're going to be out on Saturday, right? With a Sunday night deadline for offers. Buyer contacts you on Friday, because guess what? The house just hit the market and the showing starts Saturday. And like that crazy one that went for 463 that was listed at 350, they had scheduled showings every 15 minutes with no overlaps. You could lose out an opportunity to show the house with no overlaps. So we showed up on our 15-minute window. But as soon as you look at it, guess what? The buyer, okay, let's buy it, let's buy it. So now let's pretend like you don't have any other clients to work with that day, right? You got to rush back and get all this typed, ready to go, communicate with the listing agent, which we're going to talk about, because I'm going to run you short on time if I don't. You've got a lot to do. So prepare everything you can in advance on whatever format, zip forms, whatever you're using, get it in there early. I also, as soon as I talk with these guys, they go in command. That way I don't have to create that later. And that way they're on my contact list. I also put them in because they receive a piece of snail mail from me every 10 days. Every client does. It's 2 postcards and a newsletter every month. So it's every 10 days they get a piece of mail. And surprisingly, that works because they don't get junk mail anymore like they used to. So it shows up right there in their mailbox. And I can't tell you how many times clients I've had for 10 plus years that have said, I'll pull this out because I just saw it in my mailbox. We'll say, "Oh, we're so glad we got your postcard. We were about to call our neighbor to list our house." 10 years you've been getting this, 10 years. You've known me for that long. I worked with your kids. I mean, seriously though, it's very important to try to do your minimum 33, 36 touch a year, right? With KW that'll be ingrained. You'll get used to it, but do your touches. Let me see some other things. So we're professionals. We're going to run a market analysis for them. We're going to tell them what that is when we get advice on price. We're going to take them through all the forms. Again, they are always wondering what happens in multiple offers. This could be a longer conversation, but all of them do. Does the seller have to take the first offer? Does the seller have to answer by such and such? Can you put in a deadline in paragraph 11 that says the seller has to do that? No, I can.
I mean, I can put it in, but they're
They're not gonna honor it. You don't want me to put an automatic withdrawal of your offer by 5 o'clock on Sunday and have that impress them. They're not going to play by those rules. So again, I get into longer conversations about what happens in a multiple offer situation, just so they're prepared for the chaos. And knowing the contract itself, I can walk them through up front what contingencies they might want to waive, like these guys that just waived all of them because they weren't going to miss out on this particular home. Let's see. So open houses, very important. If they're going out visiting open houses, I tell them, be prepared for chaos, right? A line out the front door on a lot of these. There's a lot of tire kickers in open houses. This is what I tell my sellers, same thing I tell the buyers. Open houses are like having a garage sale and leaving your front door open for everybody to come through. Because that's what it is. You have no idea if the people showing up are qualified to buy. You have no idea if they're criminals, good people. You're letting them in your house to wander around. Open houses are horrible, in my opinion, for safety. I live in Twin Creeks, went to an open house 2 weeks ago. One agent in the kitchen, trying to get business, trying to write an offer, doing all this stuff in the kitchen, fully furnished house, 2-story. no less than probably 50 to 75 people in that house. And tell me how secure that was for the owner, right? Just, so anyway, I won't get on a soapbox about that, but I do let buyers know if you go into an open house, it's going to be chaos. Don't let that influence you as to how many offers are coming in. There will be offers. I'll talk to the agent about the offers and so forth. But anyhow, that's that. Let's see, what else here? Builders, very important. Even if you're registered, I shouldn't say registered, even if you've got a buyer's rep agreement and your buyers choose to go out and visit builders, please, please, please have a conversation with them that a lot of builders will not pay us if you don't show up to the first meeting with the buyer. You have to register them, show up. They're not being as forgiving as they used to be. And they're also not paying as much as they used to. Some of them, Lennar paid me 1% on a deal. Which is something your buyer needs to know as well, because guess what? If your buyer shows up and registers with the builder and decides to build, and the builder says, I'm not going to pay your agent, guess who you get stuck paying? Me, right? The buyer's rep agreement is going to say that your buyer has to pay you. And trust me, they didn't budget for that. Let's see. Talk to them about other websites, Zillow, Redfin, other brokers' websites, how that works compared to our multiple listing service. Our multiple listing service is up to date. I mean, it's the moment a house is listed or coming soon, shows up. If you got them set up in that one home portal, it'll show up, they'll get an email notification immediately. In fact, I think we've got SMS text now. They'll notify them. They'll know immediately when the house hits the market, as opposed to them going out trying to find or keep up to date. Especially the thing I warn them about is privacy. You start looking on Zillow, right? You input your email address and all that. They got you. You're going to get hit with the spam. You're going to get hit with this, hit with that. I try to get them to clean it up and not get distracted. Let me help you. In other words, let me do my job and it will help you. If you try to do my job for me, it's not going to help you. It's going to confuse you. And by the way, you're going to find again that nearly 100% of the time you've wasted your time. We're here for a reason. And
How does the Keller Williams app fit into that scenario?
It's good.
Is that something you're
I
using?
don't use the KW app. Now, does anybody else in the room use it for their buyers? Jana does. Your comment?
It's fantastic when they're out driving around and they're curious about a house because they love the neighborhood. They go into my app. They can sit right in front of the house and get all the details on my app. They then contact me and say, or they send me a note via the app or something that says.
Do you find that those are legitimately available listings? Is KW cleaning it up to where they're active only?
Once I see what they're looking at, I personally always go to the MLS.
There you go. Okay, good.
Just never know. They may be working an offer,
Right.
so they haven't changed the status yet or
You get notification of what they look at on the app, right?
what.
If they look on the house on the app, you get notified.
Yeah, Joe Smith is in your app. Check him out.
That's a great tool. I'm just so set in my ways that I haven't done it, but there you go. There's proof right there. It is a great tool.
I use that when my husband and I travel and we're looking for properties somewhere.
Guess what?
I
I've
just my own
used it
app.
myself. To set my clients up on. It's a different story, right? And I haven't. I've relied on the one home portal so much. But if they're going to check something on their phone, get them to use the KW app. Don't let them use Zillow. I mean, try to convince them not to use Zillow, not to use Realtor.com.
Well, and I flat out tell them Zillow does not update their data. Our MLS updates every 15 seconds, whatever it is,
And
15 minutes maybe.
Open Door, if you show any Open Door listings, you're going to need their app or phone into their office to get into Open Door listings if you haven't done that yet. So you might as well put their app on your phone just to make your life easier when you show up and you're trying to fiddle. And they've changed their app a little bit too, to where you've got about a 30-minute window to show. And if you don't show up, then they've got to reauthorize you to get in. So just be
You can
aware.
show up 1 minute early.
1 minute early.
Not-
Exactly.
I used to be able to, but now I can't.
The other thing, buyers, like these buyers today, it always comes up is they're getting excited towards closing. When do we get keys? I always explain to them the difference between what a closing is and what funding is. It's two separate things, right? Closing is when they're signing documents at the title company, as well as when the seller signs. Those documents have to get sent back to the lender, specific documents for review. Lender's funds have to arrive. Buyer's funds have to be there. Title company reviews, lender reviews, then funds are dispersed. Sometimes that can be 30 minutes. Sometimes it can be hours. I talk to them about Our closing appointments, do we do it late in the day? No. If you want to move in, no. We wanted to fund that day, so we need to close earlier in the day so you have time to fund, get your keys, and then you can enjoy the house.
I had a closing once where there was an accident outside and the car hit a transformer, knocked out the electricity to the token basement.
Oh, no, yeah.
Fortunately, the seller was willing to let my buyer go ahead and go in, because we were like, this isn't our fault.
Let's see. So, and then there's other things that come along with that discussion, like homestead exemptions, which they changed for this year. So now you can file your homestead exemption immediately after close, which is nice. One thing that you'll want to tell your buyers is they'll probably have to update their driver's license to that address. So then they can go ahead and file a homestead exemption.
Oh, that's good.
Let me jump on because we've got about 20 minutes left and I haven't even talked about sellers. So I'm going to hit some of these other things real quickly in between the seller conversation. If you're looking at new construction with your buyers, right? You've got the builders have changed a lot over the years. Now a lot of them are building, we'll call them inventory homes, specs, that they picked out everything for the house, right? They're protecting themselves on cost to build because back in 2020 when lumber prices shot up. So that may change later. We don't know. But it's nice when you work with new construction because you can get into in-depth conversations with your buyer about lot choices. I always tell them these on-site salespeople, a lot of times, probably I would say nearly all, but a lot of times they're not state licensed. Their builder doesn't want them to be state licensed. They work for the builder, they're employees. They may be commissioned, but they represent that neighborhood while it's being sold and then they move on. So they're not really there to look out for your best interest. If you pick a house backing up to a transformer, to water tower, to a busy street, it's another home they're selling. They're not counting on your referral business. I am. I'm counting on looking out for you so you refer other clients to me. If you give them that peace of mind, then, and also I tell them, these aren't promulgated forms that they use. Every builder uses their own form and their attorneys prepare that form. So unlike the 1 to 4 family contract we have that has heavily, it's pretty much written in the buyer's favor, right? Seller can terminate, but it's very difficult. There's specific things like default to the buyer, but otherwise it's written to protect the buyer. The builder's contracts are written to protect the builder. So have that conversation with them up front. Always get a copy of the builder's contract before the clients have to sign it, right? Don't let them sign it without you reviewing it. I talked to them about production homes versus custom homes, how that differs. Because like I said, I've got somebody right now building with a builder architect. We bought the lot in 2019. There's the house, house will probably be finished in the next couple of months, but it's been a long process. The builder paid me at slab though, which was nice. So I've actually been paid, but I'm still involved in all this. So there's different ways of getting paid, which was my next thing on here is how are we paid by the builders? If you've got a builder like Lennar that paid 1% and you've got a buyer's rep that says 3, you need to make your buyers aware that the other 2 has to come out of their pocket. Let's see. The importance of registering, like we talked about on first visits, if the buyer wanders in without you, the builder may not let you come back with them and help them. You can come back, I may not pay you. That's it. And the reason being is sadly, buyers and agents have abused that system with builders to where on-site salesperson, you show up with me, I'm your agent. You come in a week later, a week later, a week later. And it's not because anybody's better than the other. It's usually somebody's giving you kickback. Builders have learned that. So now you register and that's your agent and they don't waver. Lenders, let me talk to you about lenders real quick. Partner with a good loan officer and try to get a partnership for life. When I was in business my first year, you'll get a lot of loan officers that will approach you as new agents and say, I want your business, right? Interview them, okay? The interview process I had with my loan officer was, and I've still got the same loan officer to this day, is are you full-time? In other words, are you full-time and are you sole income? That's important to me too. Is if his wife, corporate, making a ton of money, he or she, the spouse, let's say, is making a ton of money, and the loan officer is just a playtime job for them, I'm not interested. I want somebody that's in it to win it, is committed, that's working as hard as I am, that treats their clients, customers the same way I treat mine, which means they're a priority, which means I'm sorry, if it's a weekend, you're going to answer the call. whether it's from me or from them. If it's at night and they're nervous, you need to talk to them, or at least reply to their text message. And I know that sucks. And I know we need to set boundaries, but that's just life. Because if we don't do it, somebody else will, I try, that's another conversation I have with buyers, which we just glossed over, but how do you do business, Paul? Do I set boundaries? I do tell them up front that I try to take every Sunday off. That doesn't mean I'm not available if they need to speak with me, but I try not to show homes on Sundays. It's just the only time I have to, frankly, I'm catching up on everything else on Sunday that's still work related. My wife hates it, but that's just the nature of it. I have to have some downtime, especially when you're working till 11 at night or whatever the case is.
And I tell my clients, you can call me up till 7 PM any day of the week. You can text me from 7 to 9 PM. And after 9 PM, unless the house is on fire,
right.
Somebody died, something,
Yeah, because
don't call me.
in real estate, unless the house is on fire, there's not any real emergencies that have to be dealt with.
Tornado or hail damage, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Emergency like life-threatening is what I consider an emergency. Otherwise, it's you're nervous, and we can talk about this tomorrow or whatever. So you'll learn how you want to do business. The Scribners, I remember the Scribners used to be at Ebby Holiday, and I remember them doing classes when I was at Ebby Holiday, and they said, we don't work Sundays, period, for anybody. That's our day of rest. That's our day for worship. And we were all like, because every agent at Ebby worked 7 days a week, and we're like, how can you do any business? Look at the Scribners. All these years later, they're doing just fine. It works for them, and they travel and have a life.
So recently they decided to take all Tuesdays off and work all Saturdays.
There you go. Yeah,
So I mean,
It's-
but
it's your
you
business.
set those expectations.
You gotta have a life.
Yeah. And the builders do the same thing. If you talk to an on-site building rep, they'll say, well, I'm off on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, don't expect to reach me. Sometimes they'll answer their phone, sometimes they won't. So we need to do that as well.
One thing when you discuss choosing a lender to work with, I also have had the conversation that if I'm gonna be sending business your way, you need to send.
Guess what, Larry?
To me.
You jump to
Okay.
number 4 on my
Well,
list.
sorry.
No, you're right there, man. You're right there. So that's part of it. So I asked them, are you full-time? All right. What are your hours of work? Maybe they don't want to work Sundays. That's okay. I just need to know it, right? Are we working together with this? Are you sole income? I mentioned that. Work hours. Length of time in business. How long have they been doing it? I don't want a first-year loan officer. There's a lot of loan products out there that they need to know. There's a lot of programs. There's bond programs. There's all sorts of programs. VA is its own animal. You need somebody that's proficient in all of it. And a first-year loan officer is generally not. It's just like a first-year agent. You're learning. Doesn't mean they're not capable. They are. There's just a lot to learn. I want somebody that's got the full tool belt instead of just a gun. The other thing is referrals. And I mentioned that straight up first conversation along with these other questions. And by the way, nobody told me to ask this. This was just what I thought I needed to know from a loan officer. Okay, this is great. I'm going to be giving you basically all of my business all year long. Quid pro quo, What are we going to do here? How many referrals do you expect to give me a year? That's a great question. How many unsecured clients? Now, this could be listings too, by the way. Very lucrative as listings or buyers. How many a year do you expect to give me? Can I get one a quarter? No, anything is gravy for us, right? We're not having to go out and get it ourselves. So if we can get a referral for it, it's great. If it's a referral coming from a loan officer, it's now credible because they've already vetted the person, or maybe it's their past client. Because guess what? In our business, there's turnover, right? Agents come and go. When you sell a home, you should always put, when you're the listing agent, you should always put the buyers that bought your home on your contact list because their agent may not be there in a few years when they get ready to sell it. So every listing you sell should go on your contact list. Those buyers should be on your list, period. Now, if it's an agent in our office, you don't have to do that. But if it's cooperating broker or cooperate, even if it's another KW office, they go on my mailing list. And I picked up listings that way because their agent's gone out of business, moved out of town, but maybe they weren't happy with their agent. Let's see. Title companies, same way. Title companies, believe it or not, I've gotten referrals from title companies over the years. You build a good relationship with them. They are usually the last one to pick up on a lead, but they also know people. They're just like the rest of your sphere. They have friends. They have to be very careful when they give out referrals because they have a lot lot of us they're working with and they don't want to alienate anybody. Same way with your loan officer. But if you talk to a good loan officer, they're going to tell you, and I'm going to make this number up. A good loan officer will tell you, all of my business comes from these 10 agents. I mean, not all of it, but the bulk of it. The rest of this are onesies, twosies. Who are they going to take care of when a referral comes in? This group. The onesie, twosies are great, but they're not going to get the referral. Same way with title companies. If you consistently work, the lady I worked with retired at end of COVID. She'd been in the business longer than me. She was with Chicago Title. I followed her from Ticor to Republic to Chicago. The last year that she was in business, I think I closed $9 million with her at that office. And it was all listings. I directed every one of them to her. But she had referred business to me over the years when neighbors and things like that, she would give me the lowdown, give these guys a call. Let's see. Also, when you're talking to your title company, it's important, and I know I'm doing all the speaking, guys, I'm sorry, it's only because we're running out of time. When you're talking with the title company, find a friendly staff, for goodness sake. There's so many ogres, right? Find somebody that's got good phone skills, good communication skills. Don't just pick a title company that, it's just turn and burn for them. I hate it when I go into closing because it's the last impression that the buyers are left with, right? Or the sellers, the last impression before you may not see them for years. I mean, you may not. And to have somebody there that's pissed off about their job or shoving papers out and not explaining it and all that, it just is no fun. And it's no fun getting through the transaction with them. So majority of the title companies are really good. And they've got good people and they have good front facing people, but pick yourself a good one that's friendly, smiling, that sort of thing. Let's see. Title company's your friend too. When you go to list a house, I did that this morning again. I'm going to take a listing, call the title company and say, I want all the HOA documents. Can you place the order for me? Send the link to me so I can forward it to my clients so they can pay for the HOA documents and resale certificate up front. And there's a whole reason behind that. But we want it before we put the house on the market. They'll do that for you. That saves me or the homeowner making a call because the homeowner gets confused or the website confuses the homeowner on how to place these orders. Wiring instructions. Title companies will wire your check to you. You don't have to go pick it up. You don't have to come to the office. They just need wiring instructions. So if I've got a standardized form with all my wiring instructions on it. I take it to every closing. I don't send it to them through email because of theft, but I take it to every closing and I just email the escrow officer and I say, I'm bringing my wiring instructions to closing. And as soon as the buyers finish signing and they're taking my business card to insert a little pack with the buyers get to walk out with, I hand it to the escrow officer and say, here's my wiring instructions. And get home and your money's there. So keep that in mind. Then make your clients feel special. That's the biggest day for them, right? And we're talking about buyers and sellers, but buyers especially, it's a big day for them. So do something. Do the Facebook post with them holding the goofy banners and things like that. And take them something, if you feel like it. I went for years without doing closing gifts. You don't have to, but if you feel like it, do it. What I've been doing recently is crumble cookies. I take them the big pink box of crumbles and I love it because you've got the app on your phone. I ordered it last night, 10 minutes to 9 for the 8:30 closing this morning. I ordered it and said, basically the store opens at 8. Had it already. I walked in at 8 o'clock, got it, went straight to the title company. So things like that. There's all sorts of closing gifts. We've got people that come in and promote
Gas cards.
Gas cards. are
These days,
huge
gas
right now.
You're connected with your buyers, you know what they like.
You know what they like, especially right. I've got my cousin makes these beautiful homestead signs that have the buyer's name on it. It says homestead, it's got longitude and latitude on it. And I'm shocked how many homes I go into or they're in the background pictures of my client. They mounted it on the fireplace, they mounted in the game room. And so I still do those, but make it fun for them. Again, if you don't want to spend the money, that's okay. You've done a good job for them. It's not like you have to do this, just a gesture. Inspectors. So let's hit on this real quick. Partner with the good inspector. Now, we're not supposed to recommend one because of liability, errors and omissions and all that. Make sure your inspector has insurance as well, okay, in case they get sued. They
fall off the roof.
They fall off the roof. Any number of things. Yes, fall through the sheetrock onto the garage floor in the garage attic. Find good inspectors. Okay, you keep a short list, but partner with them. Attend the inspections, the end of the inspections, because it's a 3-4 hour process. I always tell my buyers, make sure you're there at least the last 45 minutes of the inspection. You can come and go as you wish, but make sure you're there at the end so the inspector can go through this, walk you around and show you what he found, show you on his tablet the pictures he took in the attic, because you're not going up there when it's 150 degrees in the summer, right? And that way, when you get the report on email that night, you're not shocked, right? That's horrible. Because they'll still be shocked because when it's in black and white, crap, this house is falling apart. It's not. The inspector can take them around. The other thing with inspectors, the reason why you want to be there, make sure they have a good bedside manner, that they're a good hand holder. Don't get the inspectors like, well, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that. I can't, that's not my level. They can't get bids because they're not allowed to. The state won't allow them. But they can certainly tell you that, oh, a ground fault circuit interrupt, switch. What it typically costs at Home Depot. I'm not giving you a bid. I can just tell you. I mean, you can look that up on your phone right now. What if I don't replace that? Okay, this is what would happen if you don't replace it. Little things like that that ease a buyer's mind. Federal Pacific breaker panels. If the inspector's good, they're doing several hundred inspections a year. 2 days, it adds up fast. And they can tell you, well, this is how many homes I've inspected, and this is how many I've had fail, that sort of thing. Just generalities. Now, they can't swear that one's not going to fail. But,
I tell both sellers and buyers, when an inspection is done, something will be found wrong, even if it's a brand new build.
always.
I set the expectation way early, and I remind them, we're looking for major stuff.
Yes,
Foundations, roofs, HVAC systems,
good point. Top to bottom.
top to
Big
bottom.
ticket items, that's it, because every
Yep.
house has flaws, all of them do. Contractors are the same way. So we want to partner with good contractors, roofers especially, that can get out there quickly. The roofers that I work with have been in the business a long time. They will do photo reports for me. So when the inspector says, I think it's got hail damage, and I see enough hail damage, the general inspector, I call the roofer will go out there and he'll do the same thing and take the pictures. They'll do their eagle eye estimates. They can do all that stuff online now, and they'll provide us separate reports and partner with a good roofer, somebody that's available quickly. They're commissioned, so they will work for their money, and that will provide a written estimate quickly. Okay, that's important as well, because if you're trying to negotiate that, you're going to need to know what it costs, and roofing costs have gone up like everything else. I won't even talk about photographers. That's a whole separate thing, but obviously when you're listing, that goes in with sellers. So real quick, since we only have a few minutes left, and I shorted you by talking about buyers so much, let's talk about sellers real fast. Sellers are always fun. Similar situation. You have someone calls you up, I want to sell my house. Wonderful. That's the best news you can get in this market, right? Yay. I'm going to get paid for sure. I won't be dragging around for 6 months showing them homes. So initial consultation is kind of a mirror image of what we did with the buyers. What's your timeline for moving? Who's selling the home? Is it in an LLC name? Is it family trust? That sort of thing. You're going to need to know that for the title company and also to do your paperwork. So those are important questions to know who you're dealing with. Always pull a tax record. I've got an app on my phone that, actually I do it on my website, but website or app on phone where I can go in and look up the mortgage balance on that house. So if the seller says it's paid off, I go and check and I can see that actually I have a mortgage on it, what the outstanding balance is. So those are tools.
You can see the outstanding balance or just the original balance?
No, the current balance, current
Yeah, you
balance.
go to Remind, you can get some of that too.
Where do you find that? Where do you find the remaining balance?
This one, I use Truly Titles, trulytitle.com. They have, if you just ask, they'll get you set up on their system. And so I can look up the current mortgage balance, who the owners are, blah, blah, blah. They'll even tell you percentage, kind of like ours does, likelihood of them selling, 20%, 100%, whatever, of their motivation. How about that? I always ask, yes, ma'am.
Who do you use?
Truly Title, Truly, TRULY, title.com. They're over here on this hallway.
But they're all over.
Yeah, the title companies can do it, right? They all can do it.
Who do
Yeah.
you use, like Roxanne, or who do you use?
Over there, I close with the Bette Davis.
With that?
Yeah.
She's the best.
There you go. She's another. Yeah, but the title companies, they all have this ability. It just, in the old days, we would call the title company and go, can you tell them, can you run this address for me, or send them an email? And they would do what they would call a quick title search. But this is so much simpler. It tells you right there who the owners are, if there's a lender, how much the mortgage balance is, and so forth. And by the way, that comes in very handy when you're working up a net sheet for a seller, because that's what they're curious about, right? How much am I going to walk away with? And not all of them know exactly what they owe on the house. So if you already have that number and you've plugged it in, especially if you're going out for, if you're competing and you're going out for a listing interview and you've already done a net sheet and you've actually got the accurate mortgage balance and nobody else did, that's pretty impressive, because then they're gonna ask you, how did you know that? Well, I'm a professional, right? I know how to do this stuff. Why didn't the other agents know this? I mean, you use stuff for your leverage. The important question, and I'm going to gloss over a lot of this, but are they interviewing other agents, right? Is this a slam dunk? You're the person, all my friends have told me about you, you've got the deal. I can tell you the majority of my listing appointments are like that now at this point in my career. They have been for a long time. I don't compete, but then I do get people that will call me up. I had 2 school teachers at the end of last year call me up in Wiley and say, we're interviewing agents. My first thought of crud. You know, we're interviewing agents, not an agent or 2 agents. I'm like, oh my goodness, somebody's been on the internet, right? Reading how to interview agents. And I got to go through 20 questions and all this stuff. And they're standardized questions, right? Do you work in this neighborhood? Do you? So anyway, after the deflated, oh crud. My strategy in this, and yours may be different. In the old days, I used to like to be the last agent and to talk with them, seal the deal. By then they're worn out. They've already heard every story, and I could hit the highlights and get the listing. And I was very good at doing that. Nowadays, I want to be the first. The listing I lost this morning wasn't the first. I didn't have any control over it. Seller set the schedule. I got the call at 8:15 this morning. I was supposed to be there at her house right now, 2:30. She called me at 8:15 this morning and said, "Oh, we need to cancel the appointment." This was a personal referral, but she had already talked to somebody else.
And they got it, the
They
first
got
person.
it. They got it. So the one that referred her to me, I said, "Hey, I appreciate it," because I'd already told them how much I appreciate it. This opportunity comes about again and you find out, tell your friends, I want to be the first one to talk to them. Because I don't want to ever be put in this situation again, right? Also,
Isn't it like 78%? She's
with
the
the
first
first.
agent they talked to.
the first. And the school teachers in Wiley last year, they had several, right? So I went out and I got that listing. I was the first one they talked to. And, you know, I was just going through my normal thing and talking to them about on listings, I don't talk about myself. I really don't. I talk about the business, the market, what they can get for the house, learn why they want to sell, where they're moving to, kind of make a referral on that. Do they need to buy a house with me? These 2 ladies had already bought a house with another agent. They just needed somebody to sell their house. But I get into all that. And the more you talk to them and ask and go through all this, and I had a net sheet done and all everything else, by the end of it, they were like, they're like, we're done. I'm like, what do you mean we're done? I'm like, oh crud. And they're like, no, we're done. You're hired. Can you call the photographer? Like, you had other people to talk to, correct? Yes, we did. Do you want me to call and cancel your appointments? Happy to do it. Because it takes it off their back. Now they did it themselves, but I do the same thing when I place a referral out of state. We are past time. So if anybody needs to leave, go on and walk on out. You won't offend me. When I place a referral anywhere, it's out of state, out of town, whatever, I always tell the client that if you get there and this referral does not work, don't fire them. Contact me. I will fire them. We'll get your replacement agent, because that's uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. It also lets them know that I'm not just paying for a check, right? Let me put it. Let's see. Sellers, bullet points, square footage, tax records are frequently wrong. So I always ask them, can you confirm the square footage with me as I'm looking at the tax record? And then I ask them, do you have a recent appraisal, or maybe an appraisal when you bought the house, so I can see the sketch addendum? And if you don't, let's call Eric this camp for somebody to come out and measure the house for you. Eric's an appraiser. We have another class starting right after this. Eric Biscamp. Yes, Eric Biscamp.
And he just
He does,
confirms.
he does square footage. Yes, he'll do it. A lot of appraisers will, they just charge you a reduced fee. It's KA.
Have you used him in Milwaukee? So much?
I haven't, but Alan Gardner and some others do it here in the local area, so you can,
I don't think he does.
you'll come across, I'm sorry, you'll come across.
Contact information for them.
Yes, we can certainly get it for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And by the way, Eric's so popular too. She's probably got her phone. I probably do too. Okay, everybody's got it.
airsbitstamp.com, and then you can look him up that way, because I think it's ordered on there anyway.
Okay,
So
spell
it's
his name for him.
BISKAMP.com.
ISCAMP.
It's a K.
It's BISKAMP.
His mom used to be an agent a long time ago.
It is.
Mona.
And his phone number, his mobile number is 214-235-8324, but I'm pretty sure he's not measuring anymore. I mean, you can check, but I don't be surprised.
He just did one of mine a couple
Did
weeks
he
ago.
83-24? I think he wasn't doing it anymore.
8324.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing with appraisers too, occasionally get a listing that I had a listing in Richardson. There was a 7-figure listing back in 2020, and there weren't any comps for it. You know, it was my old neighborhood, and it was a significant remodel where they jumped from a normal 2,500 square foot home to nearly 6,000, and there were no comps. And so we called in an appraiser. So it's good to have a relationship with an appraiser. We called in a reliable appraiser that knows the area. He charged a large fee for it, but it was worth it because he put together a nice appraisal report, verified square footage. Sellers gladly paid it. They will in that price range, by the way. You know, they'll gladly pay that over $1,000 figure for an appraisal to verify their square footage, but also to give them legitimate comps that we can now use, which we did use to market the property and support what our listing price was, right? Guess what happened? When the buyer's appraiser came through, I actually met them at the house. The buyer's appraiser, I knew. He was old school. He had his camera hanging around his neck like this. And I said, here's a copy of the appraisal report. Here's who did it. I'll send you a digital copy as well. He's like, thanks, Paul. Click, click, click. Never measured the house. No, nothing. Took a bunch of pictures. Looks great. I'm out of here. Used the same comps, everything, because it was a fresh report. Why duplicate his effort, right? I mean, he just verified everything in there, and he had trust in the other appraiser. So that's one of the easiest appraisals I've ever seen done. And again, it's his license. He knows what he's doing. I don't have to say, hey, you need to measure the house. It's up to him. But get a relationship with a good appraiser. Verify that square footage for the seller. Because in this market, when we've got homes selling at over 200 a foot, 10 square feet, do the math,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
100 square feet, do the math.
Yeah.
It adds up quickly, and you're leaving money on the table if the house is much larger than, it could go the other way. It could be smaller, but if it's much larger than what the seller thought they had. And by the way, they are thrilled when you point that out to them, because some agents won't. They go straight off the tax record. They never ask the question. That sets you apart. And by the way, the difference in the square footage, think about it. That could pay your Keller Williams side of the entire commission just off an appraisal square footage adjustment. When you explain it to them that way, hey, guess what? By us doing this, it just paid for my fee. Think they're thrilled? Yeah, okay. You're working for free. It's all cut. I got to raise my price. You're paid now. Let's see, other conversations with the seller besides who can sell is, do we need power of attorney for anyone? That's always important to know. It's because you'll need to coordinate that with the title company. So if the wife's assigning power of attorney to the husband, or a family member or a husband, vice versa, it's always good to know. Same question for buyers, by the way. Or is there a power of attorney for closing for one party to sign for another? Important. You'll learn if you don't do it right. Always make sure the decision makers are at your listing appointment. Always. Don't present to one without the other one being there. If you've got two people that are co-owners, you present to one, the other one's already off finding another agent. Trust me, I've had it happen. Don't have respect for yourself too, because I've been caught with this big screen TV. We're talking at the table right here. The football game's on. Guess who's watching it? Not hearing a word I'm saying at all. It's so disappointing to prepare and go through all this only for them to watch a football game and then call the next agent because it was a buddy. Anyway, so don't put yourself through that. Ask, do you mind if we turn this off? Because if that game's more important than what you're meeting with them about, reschedule. Just save yourself, okay? Okay. Good. Let's see. Estimate of net proceeds for sellers, very important. We talked about that and how to do it, same way as you do it for buyers. HOA documents. Why do I call the title company in advance? Because our HOA addendum says the buyer has a 3-day right to terminate after they receive those documents. And I don't want to give the buyer a back door to get out of our contract if that paragraph is checked. So I have the seller pay for them up front. I have them uploaded to the MLS record as part of your transaction documents, right? And the agents can access it. And that way, when we execute the contract, they're already in receipt of it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but you gotta be careful. Just because something is an MLS, it doesn't count as delivery.
No,
So,
no.
right, I just wanna make sure that what you're saying is clear.
No, it's transmitted to them.
It's there, but that doesn't mean that they had to go get it. So if you're supposed to give it to them and you haven't given it to them, or if you know, like you either want to know that they've gotten it on them, well, right, if you have an offer, they're gonna say they already got it.
Right.
But I'm just saying on anything like that, like maybe it's a survey that you just have to give within however many days. Don't think that just because it's an MLS, you've delivered it. You haven't. You have to give it to them.
Survey too, by the way.
You have
I've
to send it to them
Yes.
electronically.
actually, for surveys, because of our paragraph 6 regarding surveys, there's paragraph 7, paragraph 6. 6, thank you. Paragraph 6, it talks about who orders the survey and so forth. If it's been given to us, and who pays for it, I'll note down, and even when I represent the buyers, if we're already in receipt of it, I'll put it in paragraph.
I will too.
11.
Buyer-
Buyers in
just
receipt.
receive the survey.
I'll just receive a survey. That way, there's no question about it. If I'm
Right.
representing the seller, I'll also put that in there. But the HOA documents, save yourself the headache of a backdoor buyer pulling out, because the homeowners associations have so many days by law to deliver these documents. And guess what? Without a expedite fee, or I don't know if they've outlawed that now, but nonetheless, a rush fee to get these things out quickly, they will take as much time as they need. So if you're under contract 7 days, buyer gets the documents and they've got a 3-day right to terminate and they pull out on you. In this market, it's probably not so bad, you can find another buyer, but in general, it's a real letdown, right? So I get those done up front.
And you get your lender to call?
I get the title
Title
company,
company.
yeah, title company. Also, let's see, talk to the sellers about just conversations about photography. When will the house be ready? Do you want to do a coming soon, right? So we can do coming soon up to 30 days. If they're going to have the house all ready for photography and so forth, is it to our advantage to get it out there coming soon and get some buzz going about the house? That way we have more people waiting or agents contacting me before it hits the market. Everybody's got their own school of thought. Some sellers love it. Others like, no, market will take care of itself. Talk to them about timing. What day do you want it to go on the market? If you know you're going to be in a day, let's say you're listing a 350 house in Frisco, you know what it's going to be like, right? It's going to be just packed with showings. So if you want to make it easy on them and they say, we don't want to be here, fine. Let's maybe put it on the market Friday. You spend Friday, Saturday night out of town. Let's just show it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday it's done. Which leads into a whole nother conversation. And I choose to do it this way. Everybody does it differently. Some agents will put hard deadlines on offers. I don't.
Right.
I don't put it in the MLS as a hard deadline. I tell the sellers, let's take it daily. And you don't worry about it because I'm not forwarding them every offer that comes in. I'm waiting till the end of the day on how many offers I have. And then I'm looking at them and saying, this is what we have, and going over it with them on the phone. Shall we continue into the next day? If we've got what they're looking for,
Exactly.
why waste everybody's time on Saturday and Sunday if it's Friday or whatever? So every day I do this. Agents hate it because there's no deadline, but guess what? It's kind of a good thing too. That means we haven't made a decision. You're still in the game. The other thing to be cautious of is when there are deadlines that they're not honored. So just because the MLS says Sunday at 6, doesn't mean they can't make their decision at Saturday at noon. And now all the other showings are canceled. They took the contract. So when I'm talking with buyers, going back, don't dilly-dally. If you like the house, let's get the offer written and submitted today. Don't wait for that deadline. First of all, I don't want to work at 5 o'clock on Sunday, but let's not wait for that deadline because the deadline might disappear.
I'll add one thing the compliance department would say is, if you've set an offer deadline and you're representing the seller, and the seller hasn't selected an offer yet, it's sent it back, it's signed it, and an offer is presented, you still have to present it.
Yes,
Because any offer presented has to be presented.
yes, exactly. Yeah. But the offer deadline thing in the MLS is always just, I've had the rug pulled out enough times to where it's like, it's nice to know, but I can't count on
Then you
that.
started getting calls and texts that here's the details of my offer, I'll be sending it.
Yeah.
But you still don't have it.
Right. And the other thing,
Creates more problems than it solves.
I hope we get rid of coming soon also.
coming soon is a pain in the neck. And another
Why
thing,
is that?
It's being abused. again.
Yeah, it is. It's being, it's being
Also
really
being sold on
abused.
coming
And it's
soon.
hard on everybody.
Coming
because-
soon straight to active pending all within a minute of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
until it closes, you don't know, because if it happens to be the listing agent, the buyer, if it's all in-house, then then that was
Right.
okay, right? Except for until it closes, you don't know that it's being abused for sure, but it sort of looks like it. But it's hard on everybody. You got people who are begging to come in, but you can't let them in, and
showing time, by the way, don't rely on showing time to notify all agents about everything. It's horrible. I made an offer for a buyer over the weekend. Agent tried to communicate deadlines and stuff via showing time. Guess what? I don't know what she was doing in showing time, but it wasn't sending out notices to all of us. So a few people got it, the others didn't. I didn't know about all this until I knew about the offer deadline. The offer was in. She decided she would announce that the house was under contract through showing time. I never got the notice. So I waited a full day, trying not to be a pest, even though I was texting her for status without being a pest, right? In hopes that we still had it, only for her to tell me, oh, she hadn't changed the MLS status. I sent out a notice via showing time. Well, I didn't get it. Oh, you and a bunch of other people. Well, get a clue. Pick up the phone or send out an email. So don't rely on showing time. Trust me, don't rely on showing time. Communicate directly with the listing agent. Yes.
I have a quick random thought about coming soon too. Like if you have a short coming soon period, like 2 days, it doesn't really make sense. You should do active because
Right.
coming soon doesn't go out to the world.
Right.
Coming soon doesn't go out to the world. It only goes out to agents. On one hand, it's good for us because it benefits us as agents so that they're not just going off on their own and contacting the listing agent
Yeah.
as much. But on the other hand, it limits your availability, so your visibility. So if you only have like 2 days, then I would just make it active and with showing starting in
Right,
2 days.
right.
But the coming soon can go out through the one home services.
Yes.
Right, that's what I'm
If you
saying.
set up their
If it's
Like I
services.
set up.
said, it's
Right.
good to us because it's
Yeah.
good for us because it does benefit us because it goes only to our clients. It doesn't go to the
Right.
world.
Exactly.
But if you're listing.
Yeah.
Not the buyers. Maybe you don't
Speaking of
wanna do
which, when you're inputting your MLS record, always upload everything to the transaction desk, seller's disclosure, HOA document, everything. So you're not having to reply to emails. It's just sloppy work and it drives me nuts when I'm showing buyers and I can't get access to those documents. So upload everything into the MLS. I'm going to cut this short in about 2 minutes. So let me see if there's anything else. Always ask them where they're moving to because that's a referral opportunity. If they're not moving locally, hopefully they're using you if they're moving locally. But always ask them. Again, talk to them about your photography versus standard photography, especially if you're doing virtual YouTube videos and drones and all this. Just upsell yourself if those are services you provide. It's very important. Talk to them about lease backs, right? Because a lot of people need the ability to stay in the house afterwards and how long they could expect for a lease back for free, for instance, how our forms work with that, our promulgated addenda, and also how insurance companies work with it, and lenders. They want the buyer to take possession by the 60th day. So even though the lease back can go for longer. Pets, right? Have the pet discussion and the people discussion, the little people discussion. What are we going to do when we're showing the house? So these people, like parents a lot of times do not want agents entering the house if they're not home with kids. I don't blame them. So you need to talk about that and find out if the kids get home at 3:15. Maybe we stop showings at 3 if the parents aren't there with them. Let's see, showings on weekdays versus weekends, that's up to the seller. Again, homes will sell in this market no matter the day of the week, right? So I always ask them, what do you prefer? Do you want to go on the weekend so you can leave the house and be gone all day and just spend the night at a friend's, whatever the case is, especially if they have pets, or is this better for you during the week? I always let them choose. It will still sell top dollar. You're just going to get a real flurry of activity on the weekends. I talk to them about how we handle multiple offers. And in my case, it's everything comes to me first. I'm going to digest it, reduce it all to net sheets, right? And by the way, if the offer's way off, I don't even get to the net sheet because it's not even competitive. But the best offers are all going to get reduced to net sheets. And before I ever talk to the seller, I'm going to know what they're netting on each offer, right? And it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work in a short amount of time. But that way you've got a clear and concise picture. Some agents will do spreadsheets with the pluses and minuses. However you want to do it to evaluate, however you sort things in your brain, just so you know what you're talking about. As far as presenting offers, like all offers get presented, right? All offers get presented. But to save your seller the headache, if you've got 35 offers, the likelihood is you'll have that at some point, right? If you've got 35 offers, your seller's not going to read all 35. They're just not. They're going to ask you, what do you think? Yeah. So that's when the net sheets come into play, along with the financing, the loan officer, the that buyer's using and the agent, believe it or not. You need a good agent to help get them through the process. If all things are equal, and this is a horrible agent, why do that to yourself, right? I mean, I hate to say that, but there's all levels of competency out there. So, make sure if that agent will not return phone calls or not return text messages and all that, you think it's going to get any better when you go under contract. It's not. It's just, they're going to be a ghost. So do yourself a favor when evaluating those. And especially since we had so many new people doing this, I would recommend you get some help on your first listing to evaluate, to go through all this, just get a mentor that will take you by the hand and walk you through all this, because there's a lot to take in.
And don't let your seller talk you into picking the best offer.
No, seller picks the offer.
When you're doing your net sheet,
Yes,
are you printing that out? Or
Yes.
you doing it? Okay.
it's on zip form, so seller estimated seller's net closing costs. I do it right there on zip forms and print it out. Plus, you can convert it to a PDF and email it over to them. Yeah, and I get it. Part of the listing documents I send through DocuSign, the estimate's in there. They sign off on the estimate. Now, the estimate, there's another little trick, because I lied to you about 2 minutes. The last thing, how about that? The estimate, you might want to prepare more than one. Because if you're out competing for a listing and you put a sales price on this net sheet, anything else you say, they're not going to hear. If you say this is a worst case scenario, they're going to think that's what you think the house is going to sell for. And the next day you show them one for 50,000 more. And all of a sudden you leave and they're going, well, honey, why would I go with this one? That's all they think my house is worth. So you might want to work up 2 or 3 or 4 net sheets at different sales prices and say, this is a range, and within this range, this is what you can expect to net, right? But make sure they know that you don't think that's what the house is worth, because in all likelihood, it's going to sell for more in this market. We have no control over it. I mean, who would think they're going to go for? Who would think people are going to make $100,000 on a home in 1 year?
That's the one conversation I was hoping we were gonna have today, is when people go, what should we offer?
You
Like,
can't.
that's the conversation. I want to know what you're saying when people ask. you
Okay.
that.
And
And you have the buyer.
when I have a buyer and they say, what should we offer? It's a very involved conversation, because it's okay. Are you limited on funds? Do you have cash reserves to cover an appraisal shortage, right? Because that's a whole conversation with the lender involved. Can they qualify and this, that, and the other? Let's say they have unlimited funds, right? For an appraisal shortage. If they can green light everything like these buyers I just closed this morning, then we go all in. And we went all in on that house and got it. But we paid top dollar for it. I mean, there were no comps for it. And we edged out the competition just barely, unbeknownst to me, because I texted the agent. I'll see if I can find it real quick and I'll tell you what he said. The buyer said at the closing, Paul, can you find out how many offers they had? Because you're not going to know until after you've closed. And so I texted the agent. I said, hey, by the way, the buyers want to know how many offers you had. And what did he say? Now this one, he said, we presented
Right.
8. It's not how many they received. That's how many. Larry's not in the room. All offers get presented.
Right.
But they presented 8 offers with several more attempting to present. We decided on yours, which beat the highest by this much.
Do know that there are companies that are just throwing out offers on every house that gets listed, and they're crummy offers. When the listing agents tell you, well, I already have multiple offers, just know they may have offers, but they might be likely to close offers. So you have to kind of get a feel for whether or not that means they have something that's really workable, or they just have one of those
Right.
offers that's just bottom dollar, nothing there, it's never gonna work, but they're telling you I have offers.
So getting back to your question on the conversation, it's not an easy one.
It's not.
Every situation is different. How badly do you want the house?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's burnout. People get tired,
Mhm.
Here's the good news. And if you can encourage them in any way, I do. And this is legitimate. I tell them I haven't worked with a buyer in the last 10 years that I've had to write more than 3 offers for. That doesn't mean I haven't shown a ton of homes. And it doesn't mean I haven't talked them out of deals. Legitimately writing an offer and presenting it, I can't even think of one I've done more than 3. I've been so fortunate that I've got so many buyers under contract on the first shot, but it's becoming harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. And a lot of that now has to do with not my skills. How much money do you have to spend? The counseling goes into, okay, you're a 350 buyer. You better stop looking at about 275 or 300. Because if you're looking at 350, it's going to sell for over 4. That's just the market. So you're going to have to pull back to make yourself qualified. And if you can do that, do you have the funds to make it work? Can you make it work with the lender? So it's a very involved conversation. And if they greenlight everything, then we're all over it. Okay, this is the way we can cut out all contingencies, make it aggressive. Do you want to do it? And I laid out, like this guy last night from South Lake, I laid out every contingency in the contract. He took very detailed notice, finance guy. And I said, are you willing to do that to get a home? When only one home at any given time in South Lake between $1 million and $1.5 million has a pool. Are you willing to do that to get a house? And his answer was, Paul, our house is going on the market in Chicago. We're going to sell it first before we do this because I want to make sure I can do this. I want to make sure I have all the funds to do it. So it's up to them.
I know, it's just, it's so hard because they rely on us to help them, and then you're like, I don't know,
And I-
this is market, you don't know, like, I have all these common phrases that I use all the time, and one of them is, you just have to do it, makes you sleep well at night, you could not worry about the other people.
Thank you. I do the same thing, the same conversation. I can give you all the advice. I can take you through the offer. I can make it as competitive as possible. I have no idea what the house will sell for. I can give you comps. I have no idea what it will sell for. Somebody could come in out of the blue. I tell them there's always a right house for you. Don't lose sleep over the ones you didn't get. They're gone. It's history. Don't focus on them. I've never in 29 years had a buyer buy a house and say, man, I wish I hadn't bought that. You know what they usually say is, I'm so glad I didn't get that last one because this one's so much better. They don't believe it when they're going through it. Trust me, at closing and afterwards when you hear that.
I tell them that too, that this is my 28th year, and I have never once had a buyer not ultimately get the best house for them.
Yeah, always. So there's always the right one out. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out that your Zoom people are all sticking around.
I'm
It looks
shocked.
like
Thank
they
you,
have a
guys.
question.
Or they went to sleep.
Looks like somebody had a question on there.
Was there a
I don't know
question?
if you know how to get that off.
I
of
don't.
I can,
Off the chat or whatever.
Now that's a great point regarding just let it go. You know, if they make an offer and they get beat, let's move on. You know, you learned from that and let's just move on. And by the way, I hate to say it, but you know, if they go through the training process of making offers, you're not learning, they're learning, right? You already know. They're only going to take so much instruction. You know when you write an offer whether it's going to be exact.
Yeah.
You really do. And sometimes you just can't get them to budge. It's like, okay, and I know in my mind, they're not going to get it. But the next offer we make, they'll fix that.
Do you say this?
I have done
Oh,
that.
I tell
I
them,
have done that,
you're
yeah.
not gonna get
I have done it, yeah, and tell them, you know, the likelihood of getting this with you asking for the refrigerator, washer, dryer, and this, that, and the other, likelihood of you getting this house is 0. Because everybody else could care less. They'll buy their own appliances, they'll do their own, and they're still hard headed. I don't do it. What did they say?
I can't read it, so I just told her to unmute herself if she had a question.
All right. Yeah, so every client's different. You know, just like every client's different on funds available and all that. Get creative though with your lender on how they can buy a house. There's all kinds of ways that I really thought about. It's a whole different class, but I thought about bringing the law officer I work with in because he has got an entire script that he goes through with buyers in depth about different ways to buy a house, how to utilize your agent, because he's very supportive of his agents. Creative ways, like he's the one that suggested that they pay my commission and he adjusts the interest rate. Now, I've always known they could do that. But how many buyers are going to do it? Most of them think, no, I don't want to pay a point higher on my interest rate. The payback on that was 4.2 years. After 4.2 years, now the lender made money on him loaning them the money to pay my commission. So allow them to buy the house under market or that these guys were paying. They did absorb it in interest rate, but it takes 4 years to make that up. So if they move in 4 years, they beat the bank. If they're in their past 4 and they don't refinance, the bank beats them.
Who is this year?
It's Armando Majoli with guaranteed rate. Yeah, the guaranteed rate's got a ton of, they're a big national lender.
You did a great job, Paul.
But thank you. And again, man, you guys, congratulations to you, because this was like half hour longer than it should have been. Y'all hung in there.
Yeah, we're new agents. What else we got there?
It's okay. And there are so many more questions we didn't even get to. So again, maybe we'll have a follow-up class on just questions that we.
I want to hear from your guaranteed agent guy, all the scripts and all that stuff.
Well, these are scripts and dialogues he has with his customers. So if you want an overview of what he does, he actually teaches classes.
Oh, he does?
Here?
Almost weekly, not here.
What's
We
the
have our
last
own
name
lender
again?
for here, but Armando Mungilli, L-I.
He's been around a long
He's
time.
been around as long as I have in business.
Do
And
you have a
he's,
phone number for
I do, 972-333-7811. Text him. I won't even give his email. He'll never read it. He gets several hundred a day and he's just like, he has he's got a whole team that he works with. He is point man. He talks with every client, but it's a phone call or text, don't email. So I won't even give you his email.
And it was 333?
7811.
Okay.
Yeah, great guy, been in his business for, again, check with him if you want to get on his training schedule. He does a lot of in-house training classes for Coldwell Banker at different locations. He sponsors things. He's all over, right? Really good guy, very knowledgeable. And he's been around so long that he's run divisions. He ran for OnQ Financial. He ran their entire Texas division. Knows his stuff.
With guarantee what?
Guaranteed rate. Yeah, it's guaranteed rate affinity for all affinity partners, guaranteed rate. And they're national lenders. You see them on NASCAR, right, Tommy?
Yeah.
Guaranteed rate.
Can I run one more quick question by it?
Yeah.
You mentioned inspectors gotta have 3, but you didn't say that with respect to
Loan officer.
title companies or loan officers. So as new agents, they're telling us to be sure and
Well,
offer.
you can have a pool of, I mean, I've got good loan officers. I could brag about 2 or 3 backups too.
Right.
I just have to throw these out there. Yes, the
Okay.
loan officers, I've got a core group of loan officers and I try to keep them all fed.
Right,
But you'll have your favorites. You'll also know who your clients match up best with.
right, okay.
Jeff Barnes with Interest Lending, excellent guy, runs a one-man shop. So if you like somebody that's like one-on-one conversations and controls their own pricing and all that, he's great for that. Anyway, I could throw out several, but
Just
yeah,
kind of sound
build your-
like, this is the guy. Either
Well, I
use
did.
mine.
I was trying to
Lender
simplify,
or-
I was trying to simplify for
No, I
this.
understand.
But the conversation I have with the buyers is if they're using an online lender, out-of-state lender, anything like that in this market, the agents are more comfortable with a local loan officer when they get that offer, somebody that will answer the phone, it's in town, that understands what's going on here. So even if they're talking with a national lender somewhere else, I try to convince them, at least talk with the local one here, get a pre-approval letter. You'll have 2, but get one from this guy. That way we've got a local person we can present with the offer. It's still up to you who you choose. to
Now, when
work
they're
with.
getting 2 pre-approvals, is that hitting their credit?
It doesn't lower it. They're both mortgage related inquiries. Yeah. They can
It's
ask,
just counted as one.
it doesn't affect their credit. Now, if they go out and try to do a consumer loan, credit card and a mortgage and an automobile or something, their credit score is going to drop. But if you ask the loan officer, but generally, if you got mortgage related inquiries within a short period of each other, they know that you're shopping for a mortgage and so it won't drop your score.
This Eric is the appraiser.
Eric is the appraiser. Yeah, he's the licensed appraiser, but he mainly just does square footage verifications now. This, if you want to make a copy of this,
Yes.
go ahead. I don't know, or Sue's, it's just a little buyer profile sheet. You can scratch my name out at the top and use it. This is very basic.